A massive arms deal is about to take place between the United States and Saudi Arabia, and a lot of the information about it pertains to like transferring or selling of certain military equipment like F-35 Alpha stealth multi-role fighters, M1 Abrams tanks, MQ-9 Bravo unmanned combat aerial vehicles, and Loyal Wingman drones. Now, this package totals over $142 billion in U.S. military equipment and services, which is the largest military package sale ever. And it's supposed to focus on ensuring Saudi Arabia buys American. Now, where were these decisions made? Who made them? And when were they made? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video, because there's a lot to dig into. The Prince of Saudi Arabia came to the United States on the 18th of November, and I want to do a quick deep dive on it. So let's talk about it. All right, so like I said, on November 18th through the 19th of 2025, there was a high-profile summit that took place at the White House in Washington, D.C. between U.S. President Donald Trump and the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who serves as Saudi Arabia's prime minister, and he signed a series of landmark agreements with him yesterday. Now, these pacts, which were collectively referred to as the Saudi-U.S. Strategic Partnership, are encompassing major economic, technological, and defense components, which mark a significant deepening of the bilateral relationship between the two countries that dates back nearly 90 years. Now, the event featured a formal welcome ceremony with a 19-gun salute for the Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, and also a military flyover, a joint press conference, which was attended by high-level delegations from both sides, including U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman. The agreements were intended to build on some long-standing U.S.-Saudi relations and cooperation, including joint efforts during World War II, the Cold War, and counterterrorism operations. Now, they're aiming to boost and enhance regional security in Saudi Arabia amid some of the ongoing escalating threats like Iranian aggression, because unless you've been sleeping under a rock, the Saudis don't like the Iranian government, and the Iranian government doesn't like the Saudis, which the main reason for that is because Saudi Arabia is predominantly a Sunni Muslim country, while Iran is predominantly a Shia Muslim country, and the two don't really see eye to eye. Now, President Trump described this economic deal as a, quote, unprecedented in scale size deal, creating a stronger and more capable alliance between the two countries and supporting the closest that the Middle East has ever come to truly everlasting peace. Now, the Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia also said that this is a, quote, new phase in bilateral cooperation with huge opportunities ahead. Now, like I said, the total value of this defense components package alone is estimated at over $142 billion, which is essentially the largest arms purchase in history, while the U.S. is pledging to include nearly $1 trillion in Saudi investments in the United States. Now, Saudi Arabia is the world's largest oil exporter and also a key ally in the Gulf region, and has sought advanced U.S. weaponry to modernize its forces under Vision 2030, which is Mohammed bin Salman's economic diversification plan. Now, previous U.S. administrations, including under President Biden, imposed restrictions on offensive arms sales to Saudi Arabia due to concerns over the Yemen conflict and human rights, because the Saudis have traditionally backed the Yemeni government, whereas the Iranian government has been backing the Houthis, or the Houthi rebels in Yemen, who have been clashing with the Yemen government. Very complicated war. Highly encourage you to do some research in it, because it's extremely complicated. We don't have time in this video to get into it, but you should look into it. Now, Saudi Arabia is not considered a NATO ally. In fact, it's considered a major non-NATO ally, which was previously granted to 19 countries to streamline arms sales, provide priority delivery for U.S. military equipment, and to enhance defense cooperation without any type of formal treaty. Now, part of this deal also addresses Israel's concern over maintaining its, quote, qualitative military edge, with assurances that no technology transfers to adversaries like China would occur, which are some of the issues that ended up blocking a similar F-35 sale to the UAE in 2020. Now, Saudi Arabia has conditioned normalization with Israel on progress towards a Palestinian state, which adds some extra geopolitical layers on top of this stuff. Plus, the prince and the royal family out there are having to also make sure that they're appeasing their population to keep everybody happy there as well. Now, the agreements that were signed and agreed upon lift some of the long-standing restrictions on offensive weapon sales, which allow broad broader access for U.S. defense firms to Saudi markets, which is expected to create hundreds of U.S. jobs in manufacturing and also help sustain the defense industrial base without having to be in an active war to support the defense industrial complex. So the centerpiece to this entire deal was the Saudi-U.S. Strategic Defense Agreement, which is a historic pact affirming both nations, quote, as capable security partners against regional threats. It was signed on November 18th of 2025. It deepens long-term coordination, enhances deterrence, and supports Saudi Arabia's defense integration, with the Saudi defense minister referring to it as, quote, firm commitment to deepening our strategic partnerships. Now, some of the key arms sales in this strategic defense pact is some folks are speculating up to 48 F-35 stealth multi-role fighters are going to be sold. Previously restricted due to tech sensitivity. But President Trump confirmed, saying, quote, we'll be selling F-35s. Now, the strategic role of these is going to provide them with some air superiority, precision strikes, enhances Saudi's interoperability with U.S. and Israeli forces. We're also going to be selling them M1 Abrams tanks. Apparently, they're going to be upgraded M1 Alpha 2 SEP V2 main battle tanks from General Dynamics in a total number of nearly 300, meaning we're going to be selling them 300 Abrams tanks. And what this will do is modernize the Saudi army and counter armored threats from the Iranians and the Houthis. We're also going to be selling them some drones, specifically some MQ-9 Bravo unmanned combat aerial vehicles, which essentially are Reaper drones from General Atomics that have long endurance. They're armed with Hellfires for ISR/strike missions. And what this would do is expand Saudi's air domain awareness and would be something that they could use in Yemen against the Houthis if they need to counter or stop the Houthis from launching ballistic missiles or conducting whatever other nefarious action. Now, the Reaper drones, they didn't specify any type of quantity, probably because that's going to be a little bit more classified, but there is a potential sale in discussion. And the last major part of the deal was they were planning on selling Gambit Loyal Wingman drones, which are like an autonomous unmanned combat aircraft from a U.S. developer, Boeing or Anduril, but we'll see. Essentially, like loyal wingmen that are designed to be paired up with jets like the F-35 for collaborative tactics and things like that, like combat collaborative aircrafts. And that they didn't have any type of disclosed number, nor did they say who the developer was going to be for it, which that's probably going to be a highly classified thing. But if it does go through, that's going to be a huge deal, because that's going to significantly modernize the air fleet for Saudi Arabia. Now, the summit also emphasized a lot of non-defense ties, with Saudi Arabia pledging to elevate U.S. investments from $600 billion to nearly $1 trillion over the coming years, spanning energy, tech, and infrastructure. They started at $6 billion when they first started their meeting. And within one meeting, it went from $600 billion to $1 trillion. That's a big jump. I'm assuming that maybe part of the reason why is because we're like, President Trump was like, yeah, we'll sell you these things. Sure. We're going to help you modernize your military, which is only going to help them, with their defense posture against, the Iranian government, things like that. Saudi Ambassador Princess Rima bint Bandar noted this will, quote, spur investment into both countries and generate job opportunities. Now, some of the key pacts for this non-defense agreements that they decided on was the AI Memorandum of Understanding, which is a landmark strategic partnership granting Saudi Arabia access to world-leading American AI systems while protecting U.S. intellectual property. It focuses on emerging technologies, supply chain resilience, and joint R&D, aligning with Saudi's NEOM megacity and digital economic goals. Some of the benefits include accelerated innovation, economic growth, and U.S. tech leadership in the Gulf. So it's going to grow U.S. jobs there. They also have a civil nuclear energy agreement that's part of this deal, which is a joint declaration completing negotiations for civil nuclear cooperation, establishing a decades-long multi-billion-dollar partnership. It's going to adhere to the International Atomic Energy Agency non-proliferation standards, with U.S. firms as preferred partners for reactors, fuel, and training. Some of the implications of this is it's going to diversify Saudi energy beyond oil and support their Vision 2030 with net zero ambitions. It also secures U.S. uranium minerals and supply chains. There's also been new arrangements for uranium, critical minerals like lithium, rare earths, and permanent magnets, enhancing resilience against global disruptions. And having a rare earth contract or agreement with Saudi Arabia will help offset some of the negative impacts that China could possibly have on the US's ability to access rare earth minerals, specifically since China has a significant access to rare earth minerals. In fact, China has more access to rare earth minerals than any country on Earth. So if they decide to just cut off the United States, well, that's a problem. So it looks to me like the United States is going to try to work with the Saudis to access rare earth minerals through them as a side thing, in addition to continuing to access Chinese rare earths for now. Now, for the United States, this deal is going to secure more oil stability because obviously, like, we buy a lot of Saudi oil and the Saudis like selling it to us. This is also to help counter Chinese influence via the Belt and Road Initiative and also boost exports and jobs. Saudi Arabia is powerful enough as a nation that they could help stabilize the Middle East. But some folks are worried about an arms race happening as a result of this big deal with them, because Iran could pump up their purchases from China and other nations like that. Now, there's going to be challenges to this, obviously, because there's a lot of critics that are concerned about transfer risks of U.S. technology to China or Russia. There's still not really any like normalized relations between the Saudis and the Israelis just yet, although it could happen at some point, depending on how the next couple years go. And then the implementation of some of these things are going to require congressional approval. So there's a couple hurdles that the president and the Saudis are still going to face for arms sales specifically. And then, you know, as far as like nuclear stuff, the International Atomic Energy Agency is going to have to supervise and oversee some of those things, so that way they can ensure that everybody's following the correct guidelines. Now, in addition to all these economic discussions, there was a pretty big dinner last night at the White House on November 18th, where President Donald Trump and the First Lady Melania Trump hosted a pretty lavish black-tied state dinner in the East Room of the White House to honor the Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman. Now, this kind of capped off the day of high-stakes bilateral meetings that were focused on the defense pacts, economic investments, and regional security. This also marks the first time that Mohammed bin Salman has visited the White House since the 2018 killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, which U.S. intelligence linked to his approval. Now, there's a bunch of pomp and circumstance. Elon Musk was there. A bunch of very well-known tech executives and business folks that are influential in business were there. Cristiano Ronaldo showed up to the dinner. It was apparently attended by 150 guests, and part of it was probably to highlight the Saudi Arabia's increased investment pledge from $600 billion to $1 trillion in U.S. sectors like AI, energy, and infrastructure. The president referred to it as a very big day for both countries. The dinner took place around 7:30 p.m., began with some pre-dinner receptions in the state dining room, and then they had some remarks from the president, and then they had dinner afterwards. Some of the notable guests were Vice President J.D. Vance was there, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, Senator Lindsey Graham, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was there, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook, Mark Benioff, Christian Amon. Yeah, like I said, Cristiano Ronaldo, the famous soccer player or football player, depending on where you're at, was there. Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan, Defense Minister Prince Khalid bin Salman, and then a whole bunch of other like media executives, including Rupert Murdoch and other philanthropists. So a whole lot of very, very rich people, extremely rich, extremely powerful people. So apparently the event lasted all the way up until about 10:30 when guests departed via motorcade and Mohammed bin Salman retired to the Blair House. You can see lots of videos about it on the internet. There's all kinds of documentation of everybody. It was an event full of pomp and circumstance, but obviously when the Saudis tell you they're going to invest $1 trillion in your country, I guess you show them a good time, you know? Anyway, still a big deal. Also, Elon Musk was sitting near Mohammed bin Salman to pitch Starlink deals, so I don't know if he managed to do that or secure the bag on that one or not, but I'm sure that they'll probably be down. The Saudis love tech, man. I'll say that. The Saudis love tech. Just like the folks in UAE, they love tech. They're huge fans. So, could be a big deal, but I guess we'll have to wait and see what Congress ends up thinking of these arms deals and stuff like that, because they ultimately have to approve a lot of these things. But either way, it was a big day yesterday. All right, guys, that's it for the daily roll-up for today. I appreciate you watching the video. Believe me, if you watch it all the way through from start to finish, it does actually help support the channel because it tells YouTube, hey, this is a good video. Recommend this to other people. If you want to support the channel in other ways, you can like this video, you can leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can share this video with your friends. So thank you so much for watching. Let us know what you thought about this video in the comments below, and we will see you in the next video.